Recording. All right. Firstly, I want to start by thanking you for your time and obviously your contribution to Stoicon Brisbane. There are a lot of members who are really looking forward to this interview, myself being one of them. So you're currently in Greece taking part and co-organising Stoicon in Athens.
Yeah.
Although Stoicon is in its 6th year, this is actually the first time it was held in Athens. How did that go?
Well, it was a learning curve. So it was an interesting experience doing it in another country. We usually try to do it in a country where we actually are. Like, it simplifies things. But we did have Alkistis was helping here on the ground in Athens, and I came here a week before the event. So in the lead up, we had to do a lot of organising by email and over the phone and stuff like that. Yep. So it was a little bit more work than it normally is. And also because it kind of went beyond the bounds of a normal conference, it kind of overflowed. So we organised, because it's in Athens, we wanted to organise Greek food and trips to the Agora and tours of Delphi and stuff like that. So it got a little bit more bigger and a little bit more complicated. Yeah. I would say it was more work than a usual conference that we do, but it was worth it because the feedback we got from people was that there was more of an experience for them. So that was quite exciting.
You guys had some amazing speakers at Stoicon, like John Sellers, Massimo, Chris Gill, Christina. Of course, yourself. Can the rest of the Stoic community who weren't fortunate enough to attend expect any recordings or anything from the event?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay.
Eventually. Actually, they told me I'd get it like a couple of days ago. I'm still waiting. I'm waiting for the videos, but we're going to get them very soon. And they should be good quality videos as well, because the venue we had was very nice. It was the American School for Classical Studies in Athens, and they had this beautiful hall called Cotson Hall, which is one of the nicest venues I think that we've had for an event like this. And they had an AV booth that was all set up with the camera equipment and everything, and a huge, beautiful, high definition screen for the slides and stuff. I need to remember next time to warn the speakers about that, because if you're doing PowerPoint presentation and you just grab a picture off the internet and stick it in your slides and then you blow it up so it's massive, it doesn't look that good. It's got to be huge. You need to get high quality pictures and stuff. But I think it looked pretty good in the end, and so we're hopeful that we're going to get some really good videos out of it, and the audio is going to be good, and it's just going to take a little while for them to be edited. But I think we should be getting them pretty soon. Touch wood.
Are there any talks of where next year's Stoicon will take place, and can we put a suggestion in for Brisbane to be in consideration?
Well, it's just that we already have somewhere, and it's a secret, right? So don't tell anybody this. It's just between you and me. But and all the other Brisbane Stoics, we're at the moment, from what I understand, I'm doing it again, and it's going to be in Toronto. Because we want to try and approach it differently and make it more of a kind of virtual conference, but have a physical base for it. So we wanted to go back to somewhere we've run it successfully in the past, so it would be easier to organise, and then bring in more of an IT aspect and have live streaming so that more people around the world can participate, and we'll have live streaming of talks that are being given in a physical location with a studio audience or whatever. They are like a physical audience there as well. So that's the plan. But maybe we can make it down under at some point, and we could all come to Brisbane.
Cool. So for those that don't know, you were a psychotherapist in London for a long time, specialist in cognitive behavioural therapy. Can you explain what CBT is, for those who aren't familiar with it?
Yeah. So cognitive behavioural therapy is the leading evidence-based form of modern psychotherapy. You can tell I've done this before. So, and it's cognition and behaviour just means your thoughts and actions. And the idea is that we have voluntary control over some of our thoughts and some of our actions. And then as a consequence of changing those, we can affect our emotions.
Yeah.
Basically, by changing certain aspects of our thinking, our voluntary behaviour. And CBT kind of originated in the late 1950s in the work of Albert Ellis, who was a New York-based psychoanalytic therapist originally. And then he thought, this is garbage, it doesn't make any sense. Like a lot of people around that time, he started to think Freudian psychoanalysis wasn't really all it was cracked up to be.
Yeah.
And the story behind that's kind of interesting, but that's a bit of a digression. So anyway, Ellis did something really cool, and he went, I'm going to start again from scratch, which is always kind of exciting when people do that. They go, it's like, forget all this. I'm just going to completely start again from scratch. So in the middle of his career, he went, I'm going to invent a new psychotherapy, like out of thin air. And he thought, well, I read the Stoics when I was a teenager. I read Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus. I don't think he read Seneca, or not much. And then he developed this thing called rational therapy. It became rational emotive behavior therapy. It was originally RT, rational therapy, and then it was rational emotive therapy, RET, and then it became rational emotive behavior therapy, REBT, and then he died recently. But I think he was on his way to adding all the letters of his own name, Albert. I think people used to joke that they thought that was his goal. They kept changing the name of the therapy to add more letters to it. You're spelling your own name, surely. Right. Something like that. Like it's like an anagram. But he passed away a few years ago, and Ellis was the inspiration for modern CBT, and he based his approach on a quote from Epictetus, the Enchiridion, a handbook of Epictetus, which is very famous. Partly for that reason, largely for that reason, and it's passage 5 in the handbook, and it says it's not things that upset us, but our opinions about them. And every cognitive therapist should know that quote, or hopefully do know that quote, because Ellis taught it to all of his clients and all of his students, and it's in most of his books. And most subsequent CBT practitioners knew it because it encapsulates what's called the cognitive theory of emotion, which is the theory that our emotions, largely, though not exclusively, are determined by corresponding underlying beliefs. And that might seem like a kind of trivial thing, but it's a big deal. It revolutionized the whole field of psychotherapy. That's how big a deal it is. So the reason it's a big deal is that normally when people have emotions that are irrational or unhealthy or like counterproductive or whatever you want to call it, pathological, like or just annoying to them, they'll be really depressed or angry or whatever, and someone will say, it's kind of out of proportion, or it's not really doing you any good or whatever, and the person will say, I know that, but it's just the way I feel. I can't do anything about it. And that's kind of draws a line under it. That's like the end of, so there's nothing I can do about it. It's just the way I feel. And Ellis used to say, it's not just the way you feel, it's also the way that you think, because thoughts shape emotions. Like if somebody's frightened, it's because they believe that something bad is going to happen and they won't be able to cope with it. And Ellis rightly said, if our feelings are shaped by our beliefs, then beliefs have truth value, and you can weigh up the evidence for and against them. You can weigh up the pros and cons of them. You can look at how other people view the same situation. You can question the logic underlying your thinking, and you can try and identify alternative ways of interpreting or viewing the same situation. So you can treat your beliefs as if they were hypotheses and start testing them. So it opens up a whole repertoire of cognitive therapy techniques as soon as you start to say that feelings are determined by underlying beliefs. And so this is the fundamental theoretical premise of all cognitive therapy, and it's perfectly expressed by that quote from Epictetus. It says it's not things that upset us, but our opinions about them. So the fundamental premise of Stoicism and the fundamental premise of cognitive therapy are shared. And from that common premise, they also then arrive at similar conclusions about a lot of things. So that's basically in a nutshell what cognitive therapy is, and that's why it has this historical, theoretical, and practical bond with Stoic philosophy.
How does CBT and Stoicism differ? Are there any differences in the two?
Yes. You don't get paid for doing Stoicism normally, but you get paid for doing CBT. And actually, that's kind of important in a way, or it's part of what makes them different, because cognitive therapists sit in a consulting room normally. There's always some exceptions and things, but generally, cognitive therapists, they sit in a consulting room and they talk to a client, and they do it for X number of weeks or months, like 2 or 3 months, and then they wave goodbye to the client, and then we do some follow-up checks with them and stuff, but the therapy's over. It's time limited and goal focused, and it's diagnosis driven.
Yeah.
So it's remedial by its very nature. Whereas Stoicism is for life, not just for Christmas. Like Stoicism is a whole philosophy of life, and it's a permanent fixture. It's a worldview and a philosophy of life. So CBT is much more limited in scope, and it's much more tailored towards the specific diagnosis that's being treated. So that makes a big difference in practice. If you're actually, sometimes people say, how would you do Stoicism in a consulting room with a client? And you kind of wouldn't really, because if you're a modern psychotherapist, you're morally and professionally obligated to deliver a treatment that's evidence-based. So you're really interested in what the research says about social anxiety or about agoraphobia or whatever it is that you're treating.
Yeah.
And so that's, your Stoicism would be on the periphery of your awareness. You're mainly thinking, what does the research tell me about this client's problem? And revising your treatment plan based on that. And so Stoicism provides a wider context for the therapy. And it's something that clients might draw on, but it will never be the central focus of an evidence-based psychotherapy like that.
How should those who struggle with the text approach learning about Stoicism?
Well, you should go and read this, like the latest book by Ryan Holiday, or I've got my book as well here, that one, right?
Yeah.
Just read a modern book on the subject, or a blog article, or a video. Massimo's got some good videos, like a TEDx talk and stuff, or anything really. It's not going to kill you. And then go and read the classics. And also, by the way, the number of people that tell me they read Marcus Aurelius or whatever, and they say, oh, the language was difficult. And I say, were you reading a translation that's 150 years old? And they go, oh, I guess I was. Like, was it the job? Like, and they'll go, yeah. And I go, if don't read that, like, don't read George Long's translation that was written in 1860 or whatever it was. Like, read Robin Hart's translation or Gregory Hayes' translation that are more recent. And then if people read the more recent translations, then they find these books more accessible. And the Enchiridion, or the Handbook of Epictetus, is fairly short, so it's easier to read than the discourses, I think. So honestly, it makes a big difference if you just read more modern translations of these authors, or selections from their writings. But if people do find them hard to get into, then just read modern books in the subject. Or there are books like Pierre Hadot's Inner Citadel, or A. Long's book about Socrates. What's it called? Socrates? No, book about Epictetus. I mean, it's called Epictetus and the Socratic Method or something like that, isn't it? A. Long's book about Epictetus, whatever it's called. There are books like that people can read that will give them more insight into the original texts. Yeah. And also, I mean, there's so many, but like John Sellers just brought out a great book. It's tiny. I love small, but like film reviewers that like short films. Like, I like books that are short, like, because people send me lots of books to review and stuff, and I haven't got the patience sometimes to read really long books. So John Sellers' new book is about 90 pages long. It's almost like a pamphlet. Wow. And he's one of the leading scholars in the field, but he's written it just in the most plain English. So it's kind of different from Ryan Holiday and Tim Ferriss type things. But he's deliberately written he's got a very scholarly knowledge of the subject, but he's expressed it in very simple, very plain language. It's called Lessons in Stoicism. And also because it's a small book, it's probably very cheap to buy the paperback. It's in hardback at the moment. And then the audio book, I think it's like $6 or $7 to get the audio book. It's the price of fancy coffee. That's what I like to say to people. They go, oh, it's a bit expensive for all these books about perennial wisdom, and all that kind of stuff. Like, and I say, well, how much does it cost you to get a fancy frappuccino? Or like, what's more important? Like the timeless wisdom of like the ancient sages, or a fancy coffee and a muffin. Like, it's sure, it's not that much of a stretch. But his thing on audiobook's probably like $7, and also it'll be short. It's less than 2 hours to listen to the whole thing, like listen to a couple of podcasts or something. So that would be a much more authoritative account of traditional Stoicism. And then there are lots of books like Ryan Holiday's and William Irvine's that are more focused on how you could actually apply this philosophy to day-to-day problems in the modern world, in Brisbane or
you'll be able
whatever.
to grasp and put into practice the Stoic values if your knowledge of Stoicism came solely from the modern texts.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like there's always debates, and some people get it wrong. Like, even some authors write about Stoicism in a way that's more like Epicureanism or some other philosophy. But again, what's the worst that can happen? We don't have people go, that guy, he used to be all right. Do you remember that? Do you remember thingy down the street? Her young lad. He used to be a nice boy, and then he started reading these books on Stoicism, and he's gone completely off the rails. He made the big mistake. He read that Ryan Holiday's book, and like now he's just like he's gone down a very wrong path in life. Like, is a thing that no one has ever said, right? So it's true that some books aren't great or they've got mistakes in them or whatever, but really, does it matter that much?
Yeah.
And in the grand scheme of things, because I think eventually people will just go and read Marcus Aurelius or whatever anyway, I hope, and then they'll slowly figure out what the primary sources say, and not too much harm is done along the way, I think. And in the ancient world, I doubt it was all that much different. Like, I think people in ancient Greece and Rome sometimes got slightly skewed ideas about what the Stoics were saying. Even Aristotle seems to have sometimes got a bit mixed up about what Plato actually said. And Marcus Aurelius doesn't... I know Marcus Aurelius's life and his works inside out, and I'm still not really sure what he read. His letters to Fronto, he seems to have read a lot of stuff. He seems a real bookworm. But you'll notice in the Meditations, he doesn't really quote Zeno or Chrysippus, as far as we can tell. He mainly quotes Epictetus. So if you read the Meditations, you think, has this guy only read one book on Stoicism? What, that's Marcus Aurelius? What would he know? He's only read one book on the subject, like, as far as we can tell. He's read Epictetus. He never mentions having read anything else. And that was only written a few generations. Like, it's not the real deal. So you could say Marcus Aurelius is, how much does he really know about Stoicism? But, maybe he'd read a lot of stuff that he's not mentioning in the Meditations. And then some people say there's bits in it where he mentions this. He sounds like he's a little bit Platonic. He sounds like he's talking about the tripartite model of the soul at times. Like, so maybe this guy's kind of got it slightly wrong about the Stoicism. Well, that would be pedantic, right? Because clearly he's got the gist of it.
Yeah.
So I think even in the ancient world, people probably quibbled over each other's how authentic their interpretations are of Stoicism. And the one people like to bring up today is they go, all these modern Stoics, like, none of them are into the traditional physics and theology of ancient Stoicism. Like, we like to laugh at that, right? Because, like, it's not real Stoicism because you don't worship Zeus. Like, and, well, no, right? It's something like 80% of modern Stoics, strangely, are atheists or agnostics, because they're looking for a philosophy as a substitute for Christianity.
Yeah.
And, like, in the ancient Stoics, particularly Epictetus, bang on about God a lot, and that's really important to them. But I don't think Epictetus would say, well, it's not the same. If you don't worship Zeus, you can't join the club. Like, unless you sacrifice like a chicken every so often, and tell you if you base your decisions on its entrails, then you're not a proper Stoic, because that's what we all did back in the day when everything was made of wood, when everything was made of marble. We're going even further back now. Like, so you guys, your skateboards and tattoos and whatnot, like, you're not really doing. There's no, where are all the chickens and things and the sacrifices and the It's not the same Stoicism that we used to know.
Yeah.
They wouldn't say that. Epictetus, anyone that thinks that Epictetus would say that has missed all of the stuff he says about the only thing that really matters is arete. Like, at the end of the day, and to be a priest of the gods isn't to give sacrifices and say prayers and stuff. It's to emulate their example by exhibiting arete. So the ancient Stoics would look at modern Stoicism, I think, and they'd say all that really matters is that you're trying to develop your own character and you're exhibiting virtue. And if you disagree with bits or you get bits wrong, that it looks like that's of trivial importance in the grand scheme of things. No one's going to quibble over the fact if somebody's incredibly courageous and philanthropic and they're a hero and they're admirable in every other respect, but they don't worship Zeus or whatever, or they don't believe in certain aspects of Stoic metaphysics. Even the ancient Stoics would have thought it would be ridiculous to criticize them for that. And many of their heroes were people that didn't agree with them. Epictetus's favourite heroes are Socrates and Diogenes the Cynic, who, funnily enough, didn't believe in Stoic metaphysics.
We know that Stoics promote keeping a journal, but is there a wrong way and a right way of journaling? How should journaling be approached so as to impact change in behaviour?
Yeah. Well, having said that, I'm now going to contradict myself slightly by saying, well, look, there are probably ways of journaling that aren't helpful. I'll be brief because we've covered a lot of ground with my preceding digressions. But one of the advice, there's not that much advice that I would give people about doing Stoicism based on CBT. I mean, I could give a lot, but I don't think it's essential. But one thing that I do think is important is we now know that many people have ruminative thinking styles. And in CBT, if you give certain types of clients a lot of forms to fill out, they'll write pages and pages and pages and pages of stuff. And that's symptomatic. It's not therapeutic. So they're just doing more of their problem by doing that. So some people, when they're journaling, it's just making them overthink stuff, and overthinking was already their problem, then that could just be more of the same for them, right?
Yeah.
It's not like... So you have to be careful that you're not kind of getting lost in the weeds journaling or dwelling on the negative aspects of things too much. But the Stoics would tell us that when we write about things, we should do it objectively. So describing events in a matter-of-fact way without imposing value judgments on them or using emotive language too much. And we should focus on our coping ability. We call that fantasia cataleptica, the former, the objective representation of things. So describing things in a very down-to-earth, matter-of-fact way. And then the other thing, Marcus says to himself, one of his favourite questions is, what virtue has nature given me in order to deal with this situation? Which is similar to, in modern therapy, we would say, what coping resources do you have that would allow you to deal with this situation? So when you're talking about problems, you should ask yourself, how could I deal with this better? Or how would other people deal with the same situation? How would Marcus deal with it, or Socrates, or someone that I admire deal with this situation? So that forces you to think of in a problem-solving orientation. Those are some quick tips that I would give to people, and keep it short and sweet. Unlike me, but like the Stoics, Cicero said, these Stoics sound like Spartans. He said to Cato in a speech, you talk like a Spartan and you act like one as well. And what he meant by that was that they speak laconically, so in a concise manner. Someone complained that Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, his arguments were too abrupt. And Zeno said, aye, and if I could, I'd even make the words shorter as well, just to annoy you even more. But his point was he wanted to keep things short and sweet.
Yeah. So aside from journaling, is there another Stoic practice or exercise that can be as beneficial that people might be overlooking?
The view from above is probably the most important and beneficial exercise that we take from ancient Stoicism. Very simply just picturing things from really high overhead. There's a couple of variations of that. But there's good reason to believe that that has a lot of potential from today's perspective as a psychological strategy or mechanism, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
And it's easy to do as well. And Marcus refers to it a number of times. So you just reading some of the passages towards the end of the meditations will give you a flavour of that. Or Google the view from above in Stoicism. I did some audio recordings to guide people through that as a meditation. It was one of the first things that I did. And you can find resources like that online to help you do it. But in the first book that I wrote on Stoicism, I identified 18 distinct psychological strategies that can be found in the Stoic literature. So you'll find a lot of other techniques and books on Stoicism.
I do actually want to talk about value judgments and Stoic indifference, because I know Stoic indifference gets misinterpreted quite a lot. But how should people think of Stoic indifference, and is it okay to label an external event as bad?
Apparently, even Chrysippus, the third head of the Stoa, said that sometimes when we're speaking loosely, Stoics would be able to use terms like good and bad. Although I think there's a passage where Epictetus, who tends to kind of use hyperbole a bit, if I remember rightly, at one point he tells his students never to say that something external is bad or harmful. But he might just be exaggerating. He does kind of exaggerate the Stoic position sometimes. And Epictetus does say that to his students that they should say of external things, this is nothing to me, like literally. But that's, in some ways, Epictetus is influenced by cynicism. He goes on about Diogenes the Cynic a lot. And the way that he portrays Stoicism is a little bit more like cynicism. It's a little bit more extreme in that regard. But the traditional Stoic position, the Cynics believed that external things were indifferent, but they had quite a simplistic philosophy. And the Stoics had a slightly more urbane, slightly more moderate way of viewing things. So in some ways, Stoicism has been seen as a kind of middle ground between cynicism and Platonism, traditionally. And the Stoics said that although external things, like the Cynics said, are indifferent with regard to virtue, like having wealth doesn't make you a better person, is really the point that they're trying to say. Having good looks or having lots of friends, being popular, these things don't make you a better person. As Seneca says, that would be as ridiculous as saying that putting a golden bridle on a horse would make it a better horse. But nevertheless, the Stoics say that it's natural to prefer having certain externals. Zeno said it's natural to prefer health over sickness, wealth over poverty, friends over enemies, as long as we don't assume that those things are all important, to put it simply, or that they're somehow more important than achieving virtue and avoiding vice. So the Stoics would say that there are kind of two types of value, and they're incommensurate. One way that Cicero explains this is to say it's as if the Stoics imagine a scale, and on one side is virtue, and on the other side it wouldn't matter how many gold coins you put, there would never be enough to tip the balance in Stoic ethics. So although gold coins are of some value, they're never going to add up, no matter how many you put on, to be more valuable than virtue. So they have a sort of value, but it's incommensurate with virtue. There's no trade-off between the two. And that's the kind of indifference they're talking about. So I think really some of the terms that we use to translate ancient Greek terminology are become so misleading that they're almost mistranslations, or they're not helpful. And the Greek term adiaphoron kind of doesn't really mean indifferent in the sense that we tend to use that word today. And the Stoics, seem fairly clear about that. It's more like saying that something's trivial, unimportant, or that it's inessential. So wealth, the Stoics would say, isn't completely indifferent, but it's inessential in life. It's not what life is meant to be about. You don't need it. And they would acknowledge that also sometimes it might work the other way around, that poverty might, in some cases, actually benefit somebody more than wealth.
Yeah. So your new book, How to Think Like a Roman Emperor, was released earlier this year. Can you give us the elevator pitch, what that book is about?
For that book,
Yeah, that book.
it's about Marcus Aurelius, and it's a combination of history, philosophy, and modern psychotherapy based around his life. Is the elevator pitch, basically. And the longer version is that I was asked to write a book on Stoicism, and I thought, well, I've already written an introductory book on Stoicism, and there are loads of them coming out. So then I thought, well, how can I do the same thing but make it different? And I thought, well, I'll write a book that's an introduction to Stoicism, but that focuses more on the life of a famous Stoic. And I knew that that was a good idea because many of the misconceptions that people have about Stoicism can be addressed very easily by just pointing to real examples. So people say Stoics are unemotional, like Mr. Spock of Star Trek, or like a robot. Or in the ancient world, they used to say like a man of stone or an iron statue. And then we could argue about whether that's what the texts actually say. That's not what Stoicism teaches. But more easily, you could just point at a real Stoic. You could say, here's one I prepared earlier. And you could say, look, I give you Marcus Aurelius. You could say, is Marcus Aurelius like Mr. Spock? And any, apart from the pointy ears, like, does he bear any resemblance to Mr. Spock? And you'd have to say no, because if you read in particular his private correspondence, he's the opposite. Marcus Aurelius was an incredibly affectionate and effusive guy. He goes on endlessly about how much he loves his friends. He's very artful at expressing friendship and personal affection. Not at all like a stony-faced figure. He has a sense of humour. He's got really amazing people skills. So a major part of his career was to serve as a magistrate, and also to effectively be a kind of ambassador or diplomat. And he happens to be an incredibly talented person at dealing with other people. We can see that in his private correspondence actually happening. So he's not a stony-faced robot at all. And then the other misconception is people say, well, a Stoic's not kind of passive and stay-at-home types and sit-on-the-hand types. Doesn't Stoicism lead to this kind of fatalism? And you might say, well, yeah, that would explain Marcus Aurelius' lifetime. Like, his entire life was spent just sitting around doing nothing. He was a workaholic. And he, in his mid-40s, without any military training whatsoever, in the middle of a plague that had devastated the Roman army, after having been depleted by years at war, he donned the military cape and boots and left Rome for the first time to go to Austria, Carnuntum, on the northern frontier, and take command of the largest army ever assembled on a Roman frontier, 140,000 or more men, which is a big deal. If you try and imagine the scale of that, this guy, he's just a little guy walking into it. Like, literally had to get on a horse, a carriage probably, and travel all the way to another country that he'd never been to before. He was a sickly man, coughing up blood, he says. And he had to stand there in the military camp and shout speeches, which he said he struggled with the cold air in his lungs because he was frail, in Austria and initially. And command this colossal army, the likes of which the Roman Empire had never seen before, after a huge invasion. So we can look at that and go, well, does it seem like he was fatalistic and that he just sat around and did nothing? No, it was the opposite. He pushed himself and did things that other people would have shied away from. He was incredibly determined and focused and hardworking and self-disciplined. Those are virtues in Stoicism. Because the Stoics, from a more theoretical perspective, don't say we should be passive and fatalistic. They say we should be thoroughly committed to action in the name of wisdom and justice, while simultaneously being emotionally accepting of the possibility that things might not turn out as we'd intended. And that's the Stoic reserve clause, as we call it. It's this balancing act between the discipline of action and the discipline of the passions. So how can we remain committed to vigorous action in a self-disciplined and courageous manner while simultaneously accepting whatever life throws at us? And that doesn't mean just sitting around and doing nothing. That would be a complete misreading. So it's easier to teach that if we just go, well, look, let's not quibble over what the texts or the philosophy say. Let's just look at an example of an actual Stoic, and what does that tell us about what the philosophy actually looked like in practice? And that immediately, in my experience, partly it's kind of rhetorical strategy, but it knocks down a lot of these misconceptions. And then it makes people think, okay, maybe I misinterpreted what the philosophy was saying, because clearly it's not what that dude was doing. Maybe he was unique in that regard. No, the other Stoics were the same.
From the Patreon website, you state that you're now working on a graphic novel. Is a graphic novel something you've always wanted to do, or is this in the hopes of introducing Stoicism to a younger demographic, less the cranky old men in the room?
Yeah. Well, no, I've never, I mean, I like to tell people, but I'm just joking, right? So don't tell anyone this. But when people ask me about it, I like to tell them I've never read a graphic novel in my life. And I just ended up doing this by accident. But that's not entirely true. When I was a kid, I read a lot of quite grown-up comics. I was lucky, a lot of these things in life happen by chance, When I was a kid, I read the Beano and the Dandy and these kind of kids' comics. But I read 2000 AD, which is an old British comic. And some of the writers for that and artists went on to become famous in the world of comics for writing some of the kind of more mature, kind of middlebrow, highbrow comics and graphic novels.
Yeah.
And then that was the sort of comic I read when I was a kid. And then for a long time, I was too busy reading books about psychology and whatnot, and I didn't read graphic novels. And I stumbled into being asked to write one. So an artist got in touch with me, and on a whim, I asked him to do some web comics, and we did 3. And I just wanted to put them on social media. But then a publisher saw them, cut a long story short, and said, "Do you want to do a graphic novel?" And for various reasons, that kind of came together. So in the graphic novel, which there's not going to be an audiobook version of, that'd be tricky. But I'm going to make sure at the front that I doubly emphasize the fact that although the graphic novel will have to depart more from the histories, because to do a graphic novel, you do have to embellish things and make up little linking bits of story and stuff. So you have to make some stuff up, but stuff that's plausible and fills in gaps. But most of the stuff, what I'd like to say to people is the stuff in the graphic novel that you're going to think there's no way that happened is the stuff that's straight out of the Roman histories. I promise you. The stuff that people are going to be reading it and thinking, that didn't happen. Well, I don't know whether it actually happened or not without the benefit of a time machine, but that's what the Roman histories tell us happened. So it's closely based on the historical narrative that comes down to us. And then it focuses on how Marcus dealt with and overcame his own feelings of anger. So how to think like a Roman emperor looks at anger, sadness, coping with pain. And I realized in doing the graphic novel that we can't do that. We can't tell the story of Marcus's life and then have a little bit where we go, so in CBT, incidentally, we say that would kind of spoil the narrative. And we can't sort of jump around all over the place too much. So I thought we need to focus on one problem. And the problem that Marcus talks about, and the one that lends itself most to interpersonal drama, is his struggle with anger.
Yeah.
And so we can tell the story of all the people that pissed him off in his life, and how he dealt with that. So that makes it kind of an interesting story for a graphic novel. And so that's what we did. We told the story of his life, most of his life, from that perspective. And the artist and I are working on it at the moment. Unfortunately, the only thing I have to say that's kind of bad news about that is it takes a long time to do a graphic novel. So I've written the script, but it takes a long time to do the artwork.
Yeah.
And so it'll probably be at least another year and a half minimum, I think, before it's actually published.
Yeah. So is there any closing remarks or something that you want the Brisbane Stoics to keep in mind as they continue their Stoic practice?
Yeah. So what I'd encourage people to do is, like, I mean, I mentioned to you, there's just a Sydney Stoicism group that we set up last night, and so that's already beginning to kind of grow a little bit. And then you've got like maybe 5 or 6 Antipodean down under Stoicism groups altogether, I think. And some of your ones pretty big, and then the other ones are kind of little babyer ones that are just beginning to grow and stuff. So I'd encourage you to foster the community all through Australia and to collaborate with the other cities. And there are ways of encouraging more and more people to take part, to get them all to join meetups and join Facebook. Because I guess what I'm driving at is something I mentioned to you earlier, which is, you know, no matter how big your group gets, there are still more people out there that are into Stoicism and don't even realize it. And when that movie comes out, and also there's a movie about Seneca coming out with John Malkovich playing Seneca.
Yeah.
Every time something like that happens, or every time a new book comes out, a bunch more people get interested in Stoicism. Every day people find about it online. And there are millions of people who have read the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. So I think we're all still just scraping the surface. And so kind of keep thinking about reaching out more and more to other people in your community and collaborating with other cities nearby to build up a stronger base, a stronger community of people that are interested in Stoicism, to kind of keep things going, keep learning from each other and encouraging each other to practice.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time, Donald. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day in Athens.
It's been a pleasure.
And we look forward
Thanks for inviting me.
No problems, and we look forward to the graphic novel.
Cool. I hope you guys enjoy it. I'll be sure to keep you updated on its progress.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.